Just wanted to talk today about how I essentially got a free house through the BRRRR method. And if you don't know what the BRRRR method is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So where we're at, first on the buy is one of the most important parts. I bought a single family on the west side of Indianapolis for $102,000. The initial numbers told me that after repair value, ARV would be $225,000. I had a rehab budget of $55,000, and then the projected rents were, it was a single family I turned into a duplex, so the projected rent value was about $2,400. So to break these numbers down a little bit, like I said, on the buy, 102, and that was a little bit negotiated because there was some structural issues that I knew I was going to have to fix. I think the original price was 105, so a little bit of negotiation there, but overall the numbers still made sense. Rehab, my original rehab budget was 55, and this is where my first fail of the project happened. We came out to an actual of 67,000 on the rehab, so that was about about 12,000 over. It may have been a little less than that. I don't have the actual numbers in front of me, but yeah, I think it was a little less than that. But regardless, we had to, where the big fall was is, and the lesson learned here with the rehab is, I had a company come in and they did the roof. They did an inspection on the roof, said, well, this needs to be replaced, this needs to be replaced. And then after they tore it off, they was like, well, there's an additional $5,000 worth of work here. Hands are tied at that point. They explained what the situation was. End of the day, just because there's a logo on the side of the truck doesn't mean that they work in a professional manner. They did a terrible job overall. They also did my foundation. They did a pretty good job on the foundation for the most part, but they didn't do all of it. The quote from the guy was, you won't have trouble with this foundation for 20 years. There's already some issues that I can see going on. I talked to him about it. They's like, yeah, sure, we'll come out and fix it. A week later, they didn't come out. Messaged them, called them, they didn't answer. About 2 weeks later, they said, hey, I got more important things to do. Basically, take it as it is. So lesson learned there. I have to, vet my contractors a little better, which I feel like every day I'm having to improve on that. But overall, we put somewhere between around 67,000 into it. It took a little longer. We was probably at about a 4 month. Well, the rehab got done in about 3 to 4 months because we was splitting the units. Had a terrible time with the electric company. Still having a terrible time with the electric company. Absolutely horrendous company. Because I had to separate the meters. It's been a 6-7 month process just to get the tenants to be able to put their name on the bill. So still working through that, but I think we finally got that pretty much settled. The utility company is so bad that they didn't even bill anybody in the host city for 4 months. Now they're sending people $4,000 or $5,000 utility bills. We'll deal with that later. But so, like I said, we turned it into a duplex. Downstairs is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and upstairs is a large, 700 square foot studio apartment. Turned out really nice. The studio apartment rents for $825. The 3 rents for $13.99. I pay the water, which costs somewhere between $100 to $125 a month. So that takes out the cash flow a little bit. Got renters in there. We're stabilized on that. So the next part was the refi, which if you watched any of my videos, you know kind of the horror story I went through with the refi. Had one company essentially tried to just did all kinds of crazy stuff. Got me approved for the loan, but it just wasn't a good product. Luckily, I had enough experience to kind of look at some of the issues that you should be able to find out if you have any experience with looking at these settlement statements. Anyways, went on to another company that was supposed to close in about 15 days, took about 30, 35 days. But with that, oddly enough, they took so long that my rate lock expired, and that's where they basically lock in a interest rate for a certain amount of days in case it goes up or down. You're protected with that rate lock. But they took so long that expired the day before closing, and they actually had to make an adjustment, and it went down from a 8.25 to a 7.85, which might not seem like a lot on paper, but it decreased the monthly payment about $60. So I went from about a $14.80 monthly payment to a $14.25, $14.30, somewhere in there. So it saved me $60-$70 a month, which over a 30-year span, if I take it out that long, that's a significant increase on my cash flow. So I want to talk a little bit about the financing, because we've got to the refi part, and I would say I got a free house, and it sounds really simple. I mean, it sounds really hard, but it's simple. But it takes time to get to where I'm at with my experience to actually get these houses for essentially free. So with this house, I actually been building my business for a couple of years, so I was able to get what they call a business line of credit. Took the business line of credit, used that as my down payment. And then with my hard money lender, which we'll talk about that here in a second, they funded the whole rehab. So between my down payment, my rehab, I was actually no money. The only money was out of my pocket was I had to pay. Unfortunately, I had to pay for, but not unfortunately, I had to pay for inspection. That was like $400, and I had to pay for a second appraisal because I switched who I was doing my loan through. So that's something to be careful about. If you switch loans in the process, most likely they're going to require you to get a separate appraisal for them individually. So appraisals can cost somewhere between $400 to $700 each time. So you want to make sure that you do that as little as possible. So go with the hard money. Hard money cost me is a 12% interest rate. It cost me $1,200 per month at 6 months. So you put that with about $8,000. So that's the cost of doing business. But this was all paid for through the business line of credit, or when I got tenants in, they paid it down. So that takes out of your cash flow, but that's the cost of doing business. So hard money lender, I got other videos. You can check them out about the hard money. So you got the hard money. I just refinanced that out with the DSCR loan. So we're all stabilized on that. So now I'm at a cash flow of about $650 a month, which is not bad at all. So there will be problems, there will be issues. So I take at least 30% of that 600, save that. I actually save all of it. I keep as much as I can in the business. I don't pay myself at this point. I do property management, so I will set up some things that pay myself for that. But right now, that property is basically, after I refinanced it, I got $7,000 back at the closing table because it actually ended up appraising for $235 instead of $225. So that was a positive that negated some of that overage I paid when I was off on my budget. And then also through that, I've recycled that money back now to where I purchased another property with the same business line of credit, still zero out of pocket. I'm gonna make another story on that. I'm over budget on that one too. If you can't tell by now, that's gonna be a common theme with what I'm doing right now. But I'm working on that. We should be listing that flip here very soon. So that's how I got a house for free. I mean, now it's cash flowing. You know, if you really break it down, I might be $1,000 or so out of pocket. But I use other people's money, the bank, which that's really the hardest part, is when they say no money down It's no money of your own, so you have to find banks or private mortgage, not private lenders, and I think that was one of my biggest obstacles. But really, what it came down to is when I found the deal, I had to put everything together. So that's kind of what you'll have to do is like, okay, so I know the numbers work. Let's go out here and make this work, instead of the attitude of, oh, this ain't gonna work. Now, don't mess things up to make it work, but make sure that you use every avenue if the deal does work. So I knew that through the private money and then the business line of credit that everything will work. So now I'm I'm in debt with good debt because it's a cash flowing property. So I'm paying all that stuff back with the mortgage, and I like I said, I use the business line of credit again, so I'm paying still against that with that interest. So now we're at the last part, the repeat. So like I said, getting this flip listed. I'm currently looking for more properties. I just had a property under contract, a fourplex. That didn't end up working out. Some zoning issues, some maintenance issues, various different things. So, not all deals work. So on to the next one. If you guys have any questions about the BRRRR, I'm not an expert, but I will answer anything that I can answer. I'm just the proof that if you really do your homework, do your research, plan, have good people around you, that it is possible to basically get a house for little to no down. So like I said, if you guys have any questions, put it in the comments. Any comments, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on how you feel about the BRRRR process, if it still works, what markets it works in, how I can improve. If you have any information on how I can improve on not going over budget, that would be great, because I don't really like that. It's one of the more stressful parts. And anybody that tells you it's easy, they're wrong, because it's not. It's a problem-solving thing, so you got to put a lot of stuff together. I'm putting it together. The journey continues. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to have at least 2 or 3 more properties before the end of the year. So also, if you're selling properties, let me know. But I appreciate you guys checking out the channel, and watch the next video. Today on this video, we're going to talk about the BRRRR method, part 1, the buy. So a lot of people will tell you the buy is the most important part of any real estate transaction. Most likely they're right. So let's talk about today, when we're looking at a BRRRR deal, what I personally look at to make sure the deal works. So first of all, you have to find a property. You can find it through real estate agents, off market, Zillow, the MLS, variety of different ways to find a deal. So the numbers breakdown is what we call the maximum allowable offer. So how I do this number is I find out what the ARV is. ARV is after repair value. I find that after repair value through comparable homes. So if I have 1,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, I'm going to be looking within a half mile of the house I'm looking at for similar size and similar bedrooms and bathrooms and so on. So that's how I find the ARV. So after I find the ARV, I take that ARV minus the repair costs. So whatever them numbers may be, that's what that comes out to. Now, just say we have a $100,000 house, we need $50,000 in renovation, so that's $50,000. And so from that $50,000 number, then we times it times 0.7. So whatever that number equals out, I'll put it on the screen. But that would be our maximum allowable offer there, our MAO. So once we have that number, then we can go to the seller and say, hey, this is our number. Usually I would come in a little lower just to give a little negotiation room. So once we get that, if everything's set up and they like the purchase price, then we'll go under contract. We'll do our due diligence, make sure that the repairs are nothing unexpected, like foundation issues. Really, foundation issues is the main thing. Pretty much everything else, you can, if you have any experience, you'll be able to see it. So once we figure all that out, then we got our price set, and that's going to be the first part of the BRRRR is the buy. So we have the buy. So then we'll know The next step, which we'll go into tomorrow, is going to be the rehab. Rehab video will be a little longer. Welcome to part 2 of the BRRRR, the rehab. All right, so let's talk about it. In the last video, we discussed the buy. Now, next, we got the rehab. Now, rehab is very important. If you check out the short, I explain what an SOW is. SOW, also known as scope of work. Scope of work is going to be the first thing that you bring in after, or actually before you close on the home. You want to do a scope of work with a contractor. If you have enough experience, you can do this yourself. If you're using hard money or really anything, you want to use this SOW. Now, I know that my hard money lender requires it, so it's always something I do. And SOW gives you a breakdown of the dollar amount that you're going to be paying for each item. It usually breaks into like exterior costs, interior costs, mechanicals, which are plumbing, heating and air, electrical. You got appliances, drywall, trim, lighting, bath fixtures, driveway, sidewalks, siding, roof, amongst other things. So you're going to break down line by line what you need. Now, it's very important when you do this that you make sure that you give yourself a little buffer. Don't make it thin just to make the deal work. You know, if something's, added, I've even known on one SOW it says add 5% to your total costs. Some may do 10. It's just very important because even with me having some experiences, I still make some mistakes on them rehab estimates. Plus, no offense to contractors, they'll add things on that, oh, we forgot to do this, or I didn't see this. And then sometimes when you get into the walls, which I prefer not to do, but if you get into the walls, you might have to additional work. Of course, you want to do everything right, but you don't, if you don't plan on taking the walls down or completely gutting it, it's probably not something you're going to put in your SOW. So just for sake of the BRRRR, I'll explain to you, when you turn that SOW into your hard money lender, you just don't get the money you just don't get the money right in your hands. So they do a thing called the draw, which I made another video about that. You can check that video out after this. The draws are usually, I try to keep them under 4 or 4 or under, because the lender will charge you a fee. I know that on one of my lenders, I get charged $175 each time I do a draw. Now, the important thing is when dealing with a contractor, there are several different ways to look at it. Some will absolutely not pay anything until the work is complete. Some will pay on a schedule. Some will pay 50% up front, 50% on completion. With the way I do it, 95% of the time, I'm not going to pay anything to the contractor until they at least get the work started. I might pay for supplies to get them started. But typically a good contractor, a real GC, which is a general contractor, will have a plan set up on how they do it. And you explain it to them, hey, this is how my lending works with the hard money. So they know that if they got a $15,000 job to do, I just can't pull $15,000 out of the bank. I mean, some can, I'm not. So it's all about the contracts you sign with the contractors as well. If you don't pay them, they can put a lien on your house, which makes it to where you can't sell the house. A lot of court litigation, and vice versa. So if they say, hey, I need 50% up front and then 50% Friday, maybe it's not the person for you. Don't get desperate and just settle for something or someone. Make sure you verify their work. References is always great when working with contractors, because contractors' prices always vary. As I've noticed, I've had a quote for almost $15,000 for a drywall job and ended up paying $7,000. Now, they had different philosophies on what to do, but the $7,000 turned out great. And the main reason I chose that $7,000 is because that's what I put in my original SOW, which is actually less than that. But that's because I got some bad advice, and being not very experienced in pricing for some of the construction costs, I went with that contractor where they said, and then that contractor, sometimes they get busy and they don't call you back. That's business. If they didn't start work, didn't sign a contract, they're not obligated to do any work on your property. So with that, the rehab is very important because it can really kill your deal really fast if you think all the numbers work, and then all of a sudden you have a $10,000 or $5,000 or just really any big expense can really throw your deal off. So it could end up costing you money. In the end, You might not be able to refinance without taking some of your own money and refinancing. So also another thing is, and I don't know how common practice it is, but I have an electrician that he gives me a really fair price, but he says, hey, when we start taking things out, this price could escalate. So he's giving me what a do not exceed cost, and I'm not sure if everybody does this, but each time he's did this, it's came in lower than what we originally thought. So, and he's had good references, and I've worked with him a few times and had no issues. So you just don't jump in doing it with everybody because you could get burnt. Always get multiple quotes as well, especially if you're new to it, because once some of the, I'm not gonna say bad contractors or greedy contractors smell fresh blood, they're going to start adding stuff on. So I don't want to scare you away from that, but just make sure you get multiple quotes and try to build a network with people that know what they're talking about. So I'm not going to break down a lot of numbers on this. It's pretty self-explanatory. After you do your SOW, you add up all your costs, and that's going to be your repair budget. Now, keep in mind, like I said, I would add 5 to 10% to that cost just for any little pop-ups, any surprises. At the end of everything, if you went over on some things, you might have to make some changes. Like, did I want to go with granite countertops opposed to quartz, or just the regular whatever the regular stuff they put on there? I'm not, can't even remember what it's called, but cheaper cabinets, cheaper flooring. You don't want to cut cost at quality, but you have a budget that you have to stay with. So that's where you kind of end up at the end of the rehab. All your costs together is going to give you your rehab budget. Do your best to stick to it. So next, we went over to buy, the rehab. Now the third part is the rent. And welcome back to the third part of the BRRRR, which is rent. First we had the buy, then we had the rehab, and now we're moving on to the rent. Rent's very important, just as the others. So we'll go over a few things about rent. First of all, if you're in a property to about $100,000, you need to be able to rent it out for at least $1,000. That's called the 1% rule, and that's a standard in the industry. I'm not saying it's a rule or well, it's called a 1% rule, but it's a rule you have to stick to. But to get a lot of the lending that you're going to want, whether it's a conventional loan or a DSCR loan, you're definitely going to want to meet the 1% rule. It puts you in a really good place as far as your numbers. The other thing with rent is make sure that if you're managing yourself, that you find qualified tenant and just don't take the first person that comes and sees it. I would always suggest newer investors to try to do the property management if they're comfortable with it, if they want to learn about it, because it really helps you with a lot of part of the business. As I grow my portfolio, I'm definitely getting to the point where I want to hire a property management or start my own property management, just because it takes a lot of time and it stops me from growing my portfolio. It stops me from time I can be spending on acquiring new properties and doing them rehabs and stuff like that. So rent's pretty straightforward, as far as you have to rent it for more than it costs you. You have to also keep reserves for capital expenses or capital improvements in case the roof needs to be redone, in case the new HVAC system, and so on and so on. Now, you should, if you knew that you were going to be close to a roof or HVAC or any major repairs, you need to consider that when buying the house, because you don't want to overspend knowing that you're going to have to put money into it. A lot of people, when they buy houses for rentals, they're already empty, so you can go in and make them repairs anyways. But just remember, you got expenses like if you pay utilities, and then you have minor repairs, fixing toilets and stuff like that. That little couple $100 stuff can add up. So if you are buying an empty house and rehabbing it, make sure you do everything correct, for you don't have to come in and fix some stuff all the time. Also, make sure you have some reserves in case the property's empty for a month or two, or when people move out and you have to go in and you have to do not rehab, but you have to touch everything up, maybe new paint, clean the flooring, clean it, and that could take a couple weeks to get all that done, and then a couple more weeks to a month to get a new tenant in. So always keep you a nice reserve. I'm not going to tell anybody what reserve they need, but I would definitely make sure you have 1 to 2 months of reserve to pay everything you need to pay. Like anything, like I said, rent's pretty straightforward. If you have any questions about rent, or I know the question's going to come up Section 8, which I've did Section 8 before, that's fine. As long as all your numbers meet all your expectations, then then you're good on rent. But like I said, if you got any questions on the rent or even rehab or the buyer, which we have already went over, just leave it in the comments. You leave it in the comments. I can drop the email for you, and if you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. Other than that, I appreciate you guys for checking out the video. Get me on the next one when we talk about the refinance. Welcome back to part 4 of the BRRRR method explanation. So today we're talking about the refinance part, which was in the process probably the hardest part of everything. It was really my first time doing a first a start to finish rehab and refinance for first BRRRR, even though I did refinances and stuff with other properties. So as I explained in some of the other videos, so if you heard this and you probably heard my story before, I had been approved through one lender that tried to play a lot of games with me, so you have to be careful about some of the lenders. They made the deal work for them first and then made it work for me second, which I guess the deal has to work for both of you, but not at the expense of nearly putting me in debt. So started out, I was supposed to get $5,000 back, all my costs up basically that I put into it. And then I told them I couldn't do that. Well, I could do the $5,000, and they sent me a closing disclosure that I was going to be actually $5,000 negative. I was going to owe them money. So I told them I couldn't do that. Then they came back, oh, well, we had put the wrong loan in, and sorry about that. That was our mistake. So then all of a sudden I was getting like $3,000 back. So I was already at that point talking to another lender, which you should always talk to multiple lenders. And I kind of did, but I was kind of, I would say, just really in a rush, not a rush, but really wanted to get the deal done. So I was like, well, the numbers they're talking are pretty fair. I really don't need to do too much more too much work on this. Well, when I brought the other guy in, he noticed that the reason that they was now giving me $3,000 back was that they had added $5,000 on my loan, which doesn't make any sense. Nor did they tell me that. They told me, well, we're loaning you the maximum that we can loan you based on our standards, which is 70% of the ARV, which came out to 159. And because I wasn't going to close the loan with them, all of a sudden they can give me 160. It was like 165. So I kind of called them on that, and they was like, yeah, that's what we had to do to make it work. I said, but you didn't explain this to me. And I really didn't go too much further with it, and they got a really nasty text message from the mortgage broker, very unprofessional, but he's just a little mad that I wasn't gonna close the deal. He wasn't gonna get his commission, but he should have, acted in good faith. But he wasn't. I get it; it's his job, whatever. But he won't take advantage of me. The part that really worries me is that they do take advantage of people every day that wouldn't know the difference. So make sure you educate yourself, first of all, by watching Dodd Does Real Estate, because I can help you, hopefully I can help you not make these mistakes through my experiences or through other real estate investors' experiences. So anyways, I moved on to the other company, had to pay for another appraisal, which I'd already paid for one appraisal, $700 for each appraisal. That was another thing with the prior company. Their appraisal was horrible. I don't know what they was doing. They appraised me at 190. My initial thoughts was 225, and then I told them, well, we can't do nothing at 190. And then they was like, oh, well, how much do you want? Which is crazy. I said, well, I said it 225. I said, I think it's worth 225. They said, oh, well, I think we can do 220 just out of nowhere, which is just insane. So I went with the other company. They ended up doing the appraisal. They came back at 235, which I'm a little confused on their part too, because I was supposed to get like 5,000 back when I was at 225, and then when I got 235, I still only got about 8,000 back. So I don't know how an extra $10,000 only equates to 3,000. I looked at the numbers and they made sense, but I really after I closed the loan with them, their customer service kind of went out the window. I'd even talked to them and they said, well, we shouldn't even have gave you that loan or something like that. I'm like, well, dude, I just won't mess with you again. It's not a big deal. I mean, we closed on a successful loan and you're telling me that I shouldn't have got the loan. Whatever. So what it is a DSCR loan. So the rental income is basically what they base the property off of, like if they're going to approve it or not. So the mortgage on that property is going to be $1,400, and the rent is going to be like $2,200. So So that meets all the requirements. I really know what the guy was talking about. And then on top of that, to they took so long to do the loan that my rate actually went down, so it saved me some money. So that's cool. But just get out there, and there's a million people that offers this DSCR loan. So do your due diligence. Talk to people that you know that's in real estate, whether it's at a local meetup or you can get in contact with me through the YouTube page. And if I have any references, there is good companies out there, opposed to me dogging out some people. There's just as many good ones as bad ones. So when they, for me, like the biggest thing when you're dealing with probably a bad company is when they put that time restraint on you. Now everything in real estate is time restraint. I mean, like, you got to close a loan and get funded and all that kind of stuff in a certain time. But don't get me with that, oh, if you don't do it today kind of stuff. I don't. If it's not meant to do today, then we ain't gonna do it. Whatever. But just to recap, we got the buy, we got the rehab, we got the rent, we got the refinance. So that's completes you at about 85% of what the BRRRR is. So if you got any questions about any part of it, feel free to let me know. I can make additional videos with additional information, do a little more breakdown of what a DSCR loan is. Obviously, I don't need to make a video for the fifth part because it's just a repeat. So, but I probably will make a short video just on that. But make sure you check out the next video when you get a chance. I just toured a house, potentially making 2 offers. I actually got an accepted offer verbally. We just got to write up the contract. And then I'm also looking at another potential rehab. I just got to make sure the numbers work. You can check that out. It's already posted on YouTube, the tour of the 3-bedroom one. So check that out. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you would offer, how you would finance it. Would you flip it or would you rent it? Until then, I'll catch you on the next one.